That's like his thing. It's very embarrassing. It's regular.
Yeah, what muscles are your dancer, so we won't show you.
All right, I have one.
Yeah, I had to like remember I'm not with people my age when I was saying that. Yeah.
I have to get a picture of you for Liz.
Oh.
She would love to see your face.
Where is she?
She's in Colorado.
That's right, y'all used to be roommates.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember.
Bad influences on each other.
I'm sure it was Liz, mostly it was a bad influence.
Sweater back on.
I totally forgot about Liz. She's an assist also with photography with
Oh, she was crazy about you.
Okay, all right, so we did the glutes. I know it's a lot of information. We're gonna move on to, let's think about this. Piriformis, glutes. I guess hamstrings would be appropriate. That would be a nice thing to go into because it's just kind of right here and it kind of shares some actions with the glutes.
You're up.
For those of you who did not color, Sharon was saying that she's coloring as she's going because she has, like, her book isn't, she has a, anyway, her coloring book is somewhere else, but she has another one that she hadn't colored in, and that has helped her. So for those of you who want to sort of color the muscle while they're taping it, if any of you, we have two sides to the skeleton, if any of you want to come up because you're hands-on, I know Bracken, you're hands-on, and you want to kind of tape the other side, if that will help. You can. All right, so you're teaching this to the class.
Okay, hamstrings consist of 3 muscles: semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and bicep femoris. So the origin, I have to take this wrong. So the origin of all 3 is the ischial tuberosity of the ilium.
Show them where that is.
Up under here, in this little space. So I'll show you the one that's not taped.
Well, and you're right, but it's pretty much, this whole thing is the ischial tuberosity. This whole thing.
Yeah, okay.
And it's
So right.
yeah, it's called the sit bone, or y'all heard some people say sits bones?
Yeah.
I don't understand that, do y'all? I don't think that's
S-I-T-Z.
It's spelled
Oh, is that why? Okay, no, I
They
don't know.
say it in dance class. Like Graham technique, she's like they all say
Right,
sits.
dancers say sits. Like I know on Dean Geary's say, and I
Grace
really
doesn't.
Okay.
right, right, she's a dancer. I'm not knocking it. I was just like, I don't know. I've never seen that. So I guess it's a dance.
I thought it was a southern thing. I just kind of.
Yeah, like I truly don't know because I know with anatomy it's never, it's just called ischial tuberosity.
Yeah.
Do y'all know how to find that? You just kind of sit on your butt and find that bone right there? Okay, you can try to palpate it on each other if someone was lying down. We'll palpate mostly muscle. Some of you it's going to be easier to find that bone, but it's just easier to find it on
So
yourself.
is it okay, do we want to know ischial tuberosity or sit bone?
No at all, no ischial tube, no sit bone. And you know what? I would not say ischial tuberosity in class because even when you say sit bone, your students will be like, some students are like, what's the sit bone? They don't know what that is. So I really recommend, like, if you're in class and you're, let's say, trying to tell someone how to sit, and you're trying to tell them reach your sit bones back, they don't know how to do it. So have them sit on their butt, have them feel it, and then tell them, you know, it can be back, be forward. All right, sorry. So, okay. So what are y'all taping there? What 2 are those?
So this, the purple and yellow are the semimembranosus and the semitendinosus, and red is going to be C, bicep femoris. And the bicep femoris has 2 points of origin. One is that sits bone that we just got finished talking about, and the other one, it comes from the shaft of the femoris. Oh, I did that.
Yeah.
That one goes over here and heads to the head of the fibula. And then this one comes on back the shaft like this. Yes.
So she could have just put that down first, basically.
Basically.
Where are we going with that?
But there,
That's
okay.
good, okay.
So red is bicep femoris, origin, ilium, insert is the head, skinny one is the fibula. Yes. Okay. The head of the fibula is the insert for bicep femoris. For semimembranosus and tendinosis, the insert is the medial condyle, so medial and middle condyle, bony sticky part of the tibula. So big bone.
Tibia, yeah. And you did great.
That's
For
right.
being as confused as you were earlier, you did good. You really pulled yourself together.
Thanks,
It was good. Yeah.
So the bicep femoris
So the
inserts where
inserts, okay.
They all
insert.
three insert at the same place.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
no they
Insert.
originated the same place.
Yes, insert is head of fibula.
Head of fibula.
Which is on the lateral leg. We're gonna palpate, okay? We're gonna palpate those muscles.
And so I'll say again, insert on semimembranosus and semitendinosus is medial condyle of tibia.
Tibia, yeah.
Tibia.
Tibia. It's fibula and tibia. You're adding the L.
Oh.
That's good. You did
And I
good.
wrote
Okay.
L too.
Okay, y'all want to palpate real quick, and then we'll talk about muscles that work, poses that work it. I'll feel it palpating. Okay, so if you felt your sit bone, all three hamstring muscles attached to the sit bone. All right, so we know that that's the origin. All right, get a partner and one partner. One of y'all lie down on your belly.
You're gonna palpate each other's bodies.
Okay. So, real quick, what is the action, or were you going to do the action? What's the action of the hamstring?
It flexes your and extends your hip and your knee.
Oh, okay, hold on. What?
It flexes and extends the hip, and it flexes the knee and
Okay.
extends it.
Okay, yeah, it flexes the knee, then the and comes in, extends the hip. Okay? Well, and it makes sense because it crosses over the hip joint from the sit bone down to the outside, and it crosses over the knee joint. So it's going to affect the knee joint and the hip joint. Okay? What other muscle does this?
The glute.
Right, max. Okay, so your fibula is on the lateral side. So if you go, okay, here's your kneecap. If you go lateral and down a little bit, you'll feel a bone. It's better to feel it if the knees are slightly bent. And I'll come show you the fibular head if you're having a hard time with that.
Once again, the knobbly thing.
Yeah, it's a little knobbly thing. Yeah. Almost bending it more, you can maybe feel it more. Some have a bigger one. And then here's a knobbly thing here is the bottom part of the fibula. It's the condyle. I mean the malleoli. Okay? So that's your fibula on the outside. And so the hamstring's attached to the fibula. The biceps femoris has two muscle bellies. This muscle belly is here, but it really kind of merges up into here. It's really one muscle. And then your medial condyle is medial. This big bone, you have two. You have the knee joint line, and you have the femoral condyle and the tibial condyle. So they're kind of coming together in the middle. It's more on the lower part because it's the fibula, the tibia, not the femur. The femur is more up here. And if you kind of bend the knee, you may feel like a little joint line is kind of like below. They come together and make the joint. Okay? So come onto your tummy, and then I'll show you all how to find it on your partner. So if the hamstrings flex the knee, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to resist flexion. So you're going to take your leg this way, push into my hand. That's well, not that hard because I'm sliding. Just a little bit. And then you can palpate the tendinous junction. Right there.
Towards me.
You can palpate, if you just kind of look around for a string, you're going to feel the tendon of the hamstring. Yours is very medial. Now, push into my hand again. Yeah, and then you can palpate all the way up to the muscle where the sit bone is. All right? So they're going into flexion, and you're just resisting it a little bit to get that muscle to really contract. And just look on the side for by the knee. Okay? So get a partner, feel each other's insertion point, and then I will walk around and make sure y'all can feel it. And then we'll talk about the other area. You want to do me? Go right there. Okay.
Megan, how's your beard?
I can lay down.
It was more inside stuff.
You can feel the strength, feel that like strength. And then you feel it coming all the way up.
You can only feel one though.
She like she should have
Right, yeah. And you do need it. And here because the glutes
more. Well, now they say it's here.
So are we supposed to be feeling
right up there.
We're looking at
It's gonna be more. But you know where it is on your set. Yeah. Well, because you're not
The big side.
They're making fun of me.
I'll be right.
Really making fun of myself.
Butt clenching. I think butt clenching is like when you see people in like shorts and they clench their butt.
I work with a girl, that's just the way she stands. She can change it all the time. Yeah.
Standing and stuff. Now
All right. All right, y'all ready? How many help? Is that help?
Thanks, Amy.
Is that helpful? Okay, all right. You guys are ready to teach.
And that's
Are you ready?
doing martial arts. I used to walk like this on.
You know.
And just
I let the groups come together because then you can go with, listen. Because you know the larger it is, the harder it is to kind of control. Okay, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
We only have 10 hours. We'll fly.
For the stretches, we have Uttanasana. So here,
Why is that stretching?
because it's abducting. It's lengthening it?
Yeah, it is lengthening it. Good, and your body is going into major, what? Is it hip flexion or hip extension?
Extension.
Hip extension?
Hip flexion.
Flexion.
Hip. Mm-hmm. Your hips are flexed.
Remember
Yeah.
the fetus thing versus the.
Hip flexion.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's a hip extensor. Is it also stretching at the knee, or is it just stretching at the hip?
It's the knee extension.
Is the knee
Hip
extended or flexed right now?
Extended.
Yeah.
Extended, yeah.
Good, so it's stretching at both locations. It doesn't always work with stretching both locations.
We also had, do I need to do more stretches? We had them
Yeah.
for all three. Okay. We did.
Yeah, just group them as one.
Okay. Pars Uttanasana. So I can't even. Is this it?
Oh yeah, I mean like that's a major one. That one is super. Okay.
And Parvati Janu Sasana.
Mm-hmm. Man, some of your students with really tight hamstrings should not do that one because it can crank the back. If you don't get the motion in the hamstring, it's going to go overdo it somewhere else. So that's important to know. If you have someone who needs blocks in triangle, or for whatever reason you have recognized that they have really tight hamstrings because they look like this in a forward fold, I do not recommend that pose.
Which one?
Revolve Jani Shirshasana.
But what if you have a belt looped around the foot and they're holding it to keep the back up?
Sure.
Then that way they're not, okay.
They're not trying to crank into it and compensate in other parts of their body like their back because they can't get it in the hamstring. Okay.
For strengthening.
Can I add one to the stretching? Because I don't feel my hamstrings in any pose as much as I do with this. This is so intense on them for me, at least.
Okay, so undo your legs real quick and put both legs forward. And you don't feel it when you come forward here?
Not as much.
Okay,
for
okay,
some
wait.
reason.
So come forward.
Undo.
Come forward. And really activate those quads and press those knees down towards the floor.
I mean, I still do, but there's something, I don't know why, but maybe it's because it's isolated to one.
Well, when you
single
cross your
leg.
leg, yeah. When you cross the leg over, that's pushing this thigh down for you, which is what I was asking you to do
Okay.
for you to push yourself. So this is setting it down and helping you keep that knee extended.
Oh.
The more extended the knee is, the more stretch you're going to get because the hamstrings cross over that knee.
What about down dog?
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about down dog in a minute. The hamstrings are going to be very important, so we're going to spend a little bit of time on them. If you're like this and you come forward, that's setting that thigh down for you. This would make it a more relaxed hamstring stretch because you're not having to use your quads as much to keep that position where this pushes it down for you. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But a lot of people cannot do this. So they have to do a single leg forward fold or Paschimottanasana. If you can, this is going into lotus, do this. Then that is nice because that's pushing that thigh down for you. Is that what you were going to say? Or did you have anything?
No, I was just saying that it could also be more intense because it's the single leg. Because if you have a lot of tightness in the back of the leg, doing one at a time, you'll have an easier time than you will doing both at once.
Well, it's more available. And in
Right.
his issue, it wasn't so much availability. It's that your hamstrings are fairly open. His hips are fairly open. And this helps push that down more with less work in the quads. And a lot of people don't work their thighs as much in these forward folds. It's something you have to instruct. You have to tell your students to do that. Because then they'll sort of, I don't know, it's just they're not very active. Okay, so that is a good one. This is an advanced one. This is more available, what Caroline was saying, if you're tight than this. Do y'all understand that Paschimottanasana, doing it with one leg, is more available? What about forward folding? How can you do a one leg forward fold without doing a single leg standing pose to make forward folding more available?
Alternate the weight on your feet.
Like, show me what you mean by alternate. Because
Well, I
You
mean,
may-
you do a forward fold and you bend one knee
Yeah.
slightly, and you are more. So if your right leg is bent, you're stretching more the hamstring
Yeah.
of the left.
In
Yeah.
addition to that kayaker's pose, where you kind of go in like that, would that also?
oh Lord, no, y'all do not need to do that in most classes with most people. That can really wreck a back out. I mean, that can really, and we're going to talk about forward folding while we're on the hamstrings and how it relates to back injury and why almost with yoga it's been a fad to do a lot of flexion, and not enough opening, and why that's maybe not the best thing to do in a class, or to not be heavy on the flexion. Have y'all experienced that? Lots of forward folding, standing forward fold, sitting forward fold, cross leg forward fold. So there needs to be a shift in that. When you understand the anatomy of the back, I'm going to do a back class, which is going to be very important for teachers. An anatomy back class focuses just on the back and issues with the back and how we can make it worse or better. But there's an overflexion going on in classes from when I was taking it. So I don't know now because I haven't had a chance to take lots of them. We need to focus on extension more, and I'll tell you why. But so single leg forward folding is good, and I like to give it to people who, when they come into a fold, they're stuck like this. They don't have any room in their hamstrings, and they're really flexing their spine. So you put them on blocks, and you let them do one at a time.
Or you can stick them on their back and have the leg up in the air.
With
Yeah.
the strap.
Exactly. Now, if you're in a flow class, okay, then it's not as, you can't flow so much with that. So if you're in a more restorative class, or if you have a class and you happen to look around the room and say, oh, I have 3 super tight guys, you could, for that class, start in that position and get them really warmed up. You know, if you get to know your students really well, or sometimes you can just look at someone and pretty much guess their need. Or if you start class in a forward fold and half of your class is stuck like this, get on the floor maybe and change what you're doing and warm up those hamstrings. But they're still going to be tight, but it'll help release them a little bit. Did you say down dog?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about stretching them still, right? So you said Uttanasana. We talked about bending one knee, then the other is being more available. What other stretches did you have?
I only put 3 for stretches.
Okay, so down dog is a stretch, but can someone demonstrate down dog for me? Or Caroline, can you do it?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to give you actually some instructions on how to do it. Turn more the other way, because I think
This way?
yeah.
This way?
No,
This
no,
way?
no.
This
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're stretching your hamstrings, she's going to reach her sit bones up towards the ceiling and heels down. That's stretching your hamstrings because it's lengthening them, right? Sit bones are moving up away from the back of the knees. Now, do the thing, or the rounding thing, where you see a lot of guys do it. Don't bend the knees, but yeah, sort of.
Like this?
Yeah, she's having a hard time doing it, but even more pull the belly.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
No, I like it like this. No.
Yeah.
Don't need to bend the knees. No, I don't need to bend the knees.
Do it with the legs straight though, and really puff like a cat tilt, like okay. That have y'all seen that in a class? Okay, so
You seem really comfortable.
well, and you go and you tell them, you're like, hey guy, because it's usually a guy. You gotta sit bones up. Where are they? If you tell them where they are, they can't do it because their hamstrings are too tight.
And they refuse to bend their knees.
Because they don't really know where their knees are right now because they're upside down. So anyway, so then you tell them to bend their knees, okay, and then keep the knees bent and reach their butt up. That's how you help them, because otherwise they're flexing too much here and they're not getting what they need here. So okay, so then this isn't fair because then they're not really stretching their hamstrings. And then have them do one leg at a time. Pedal. There you go. And then what they'll do is they'll really bounce forward and back, and you want them to keep their belly and thigh closed.
Oh, they really can.
And then
the head will be like this.
do it without pedaling, just like only moving the knees.
Okay. This way?
Yeah, and then so this is staying very still. So those are things that you can give them pointers to do. They're going to have to do single leg down dog, or bending one knee then the other, because their hamstrings are too tight to have them both stretching at the same time, and then they're compensating here. Have y'all seen that? Have you looked at your neighbor going, his down dog sucks?
I judge people constantly.
See, so you've seen it.
Fight and grab.
No.
What was the question?
We're always fighting gravity. I'm fighting gravity right now.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
she's supported from opposing.
I was
ends
asking if
of
this was
things, is
eccentric, since it was a.
No, there's not really anything eccentric going
If she
on.
moves
And their
to one
hamstrings
leg, it
are,
would
they're
be
not,
better.
they're really not contracting. They're on stretch.
They're on stretch.
They're
Yeah,
on
yeah,
stretch. They're not
Yeah.
contracting.
Okay.
I was
All
thinking
right,
she was
Caroline, you're
away.
not sick of that yet?
No, I'm good.
Misty, what was that girl's name that worked at Paulette's? She kind of had a drinking problem.
Oh, that's a long list. Gee, you want me to bust somebody out with a drinking problem?
It wasn't that. I mean, we all did sort of.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the restaurant business. The point was, we were talking about Gravity, and she remember the dishwasher guy?
Gravity got a hold of her?
Well, do you remember the dishwasher guy who was the son of that, one of the ladies that worked there? Anyway, she would go up to him, he was like 16, she'd go, 20? 30, talking about her boobs. 20? I was just saying that because I said we're always fighting Gravity. And that made me think of her every time I think about Gravity, because she would harass his 16-year-old, and he'd be like, stop it.
I remember Ethan.
Ethan, yes.
Yeah,
And
Ethan was
I
easy to
can't
freak
remember her
out.
name. Yeah, and to say drinking problem, it wasn't fair because, that's just the nature of the restaurant business.
Right.
Okay.
She got a point at me.
You were in it?
Yes. Drinking problem, yes.
Okay. So, hamstrings, okay, so down dog. Okay, now how are we going to, now it's a tricky muscle because it can,
Hip and knee.
yeah, it's about, okay, so how can you stretch the hamstrings without, only at the hip?
How can you stretch the hamstrings?
Only at the, only with,
Flexor.
What do you mean?
Stretching it.
Stretching.
how would you stretch the
A
hamstring?
high hamstring stretch. That's what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah. When you figure it out, let me know, because that's what my husband has had issues with for a really long time.
With what?
He had a high hamstring injury
Oh,
from running, so
yeah.
he's been
Is
working
this
at it.
It's
Well, the
quadriceps.
stretch wouldn't necessarily be
Hamstring.
what he would need.
Well, he
Hamstring
had
now.
we've had
And it's not my knee.
Stay
He would need
there
strengthening and
What-
not
and then bend
over.
your knee.
Halasana,
Look.
pose.
Look at her, what she's doing. She's doing it.
This.
Give yourself a bend in your knee.
Anytime the
Toe
knee is
down
bent and the
or
hip is
toe
flexed.
up.
Well,
It's
anytime
like
the knee is bent and the hip is flexed, you're going to stretch
just
only
here.
this portion.
So like a low lunge.
So what
A
would you
lunge.
call that?
No, this
Well-
is what is it like Hanumanasana
Proposal pose,
variation?
Right, half
Or
Hanumanasana.
Yeah, half splits, Hanumanasana, half monkey
People
pose.
call it proposal pose.
Well,
Yeah.
if I'm doing this, the hamstrings
Oh,
are on
yes.
slack here, right? Because the hamstrings are knee extensors.
Yeah.
And the hip is,
Flex.
I'm sort of stretching here. It's not a great hamstring stretch, but the reason why you want to know it is because what happens a lot of times also in a forward fold is we can overstretch at the sit bone, and the same thing with triangle. Now, at the same time that some people need a bend in their knees, you still need to understand that you're trying to stretch your sit bones up away from the back of the knee, regardless of whether your knee is bent or straight, because you want to lengthen from where it crosses over the knee up to the sit bone. So if someone's doing a forward fold with their knees bent, they're not really getting a stretch here. I think where it's a real big issue, a lot of yoga people have that they call yoga butt, that pain in their sit bone when they forward fold. Has anyone ever experienced that?
Because the hamstrings are
Yeah.
overstretched.
You're overstretching at that sit bone. So Misty, would you say you're
Wait,
more
where? Exactly where?
at the sit bone where it connects to the sit
Yeah, and I
bone?
have a few friends that complain about it once in a while.
Is that also because you're pushing, you're not actually folding forward, but your rump is
Pushing
kind of
back.
overcompensating and you're pushing it out while you're going down? And so you're getting those flexors instead of the muscle?
Leaning back a little bit, and I think what you're saying is you're kind of back.
Right,
here
exactly, just
instead
like
of being
that,
here.
uh-huh.
A lot of it has to do with the knees. If your knees aren't straight, you're really focusing that stretch on the sit bone. The problem is once someone already has a sit bone issue, to really straighten the knee, because it's weak at the sit bone, you're going to still feel it pulling there.
Okay.
So there needs to be like a healing process first. So initially, most people who have a sit bone pain, it's a chronic issue they've had for a long time, and it's small little overstretching tears there. And so strengthening this area is going to be really good. Anything that you do that works the glutes eccentrically will work that area, the hamstrings also. So that's good work, but you got to ease into it once you have an injury. The first few days of the injury, it's the inflammatory process, and then once that passes, you have a repairing process that can go on for about 3 to 6 weeks, and then you have a remodeling process that can go on for like a year. But if you're constantly going into this stretch over and over again, you're not able to remodel, and you're constantly going back into that inflammatory and repair stage. So you want to make sure you stretch in your forward fold properly, and so that means that you actually want your knees straight. Now that doesn't apply to this guy who's like this. He's going to have to bend his knees, he's going to have to hold on blocks, because what you need to have in a forward fold is this bend, not a flexion in the spine. Are you tight in your hamstrings? Let me see, come over here. So it's a tricky situation, and I'll tell you things that you can get your students to do to help them strengthen their sit bone tear. So do a forward fold, but ease into it since we haven't really been doing a lot of yoga. So now he's flexing his spine because his hamstrings kind of stopped moving for him. All right, so he's not that bad. His belly and thigh are pretty close. Come up just a little bit. Some people kind of stop here, and then they're hanging out right here in their lumbar spine. Y'all see that? Because their pelvis can't come up anymore and shift their spine down, so their spine's in flex position. Y'all see that? And if your spine is in a flex position, and you have the weight of the head, which is heavy, and the body, a long lever arm away from this center point, that's going to stress those discs and cause them to bulge out this way. That's the back class, okay? But you do need to know that if your hamstrings are tight, it's going to go into the back. And the way you look at it, you see how close this is together. Now, who's really tight and open and ready to do a deep forward fold? You did one. Okay, so come stand over here. Wait, come back over here for a minute. James, sorry. Now, for him, I would say use blocks, bend the knees, and do one at a time so that he is getting the part of the knee that we don't get. We overstretch this part of the sit bones, but we don't really get this part. So for him, I would say, or for someone that, when I showed him to come up a little bit, I would say, okay, so come down, and okay, come down slowly, lifting your sit bones up as much as they'll go. Hold the blocks, and then I would work on bending one knee. And you see that gives him, and then raising up, that gives him a safer forward fold. It's less pressure on the back. And that way he's really getting that back leg straight where he may not have been able to get it with both legs. Because if we don't stretch, if we're real tight over here, so straighten this leg. If we're real tight where the hamstrings cross here, it puts too much stretch up here. Now for you, being real flexible, have you ever had any feeling in that sit bone connection at all? Good. All right, we want to keep it that way. So you do a fold. Okay, now for her, because she's so flexible, she almost can hang out in her sit bones. And she's lucky she hasn't had anything. A lot of flexible people will have that sit bone pain. So she wants to make sure her thighs are engaged and her knees are straightening. So yeah, that way that stretch travels more down across the knee. Did that change how you felt the stretch here at all?
Feel it more through the lower part of the back of my legs.
Yeah. Okay. So if you feel your hamstrings just up here, it's going to overstretch here, and if you're lucky, you won't, but you may at some point have too much of a stretch here. So when you do a forward fold, you want your student, especially your flexible one, you can come up to activate the quads a little bit to transfer that stretch down where it crosses over the knee.
You come home with yoga butt, what can you do about it?
Okay, so if for some people experience it, they feel it, they know they did it. If they do that right, and a lot of people don't. If you do have that, you want to ice that area. Ice is always safe. Heat should only be done after the inflammatory stage, which is really to be safe the first week after an injury. If you have a chronic condition, Misty, where it's just kind of there, you've overstretched it, right? You didn't have an actual injury, is what you're saying?
No,
I raised my hand. I'm the one who has the chronic pain.
Okay, but you said you didn't know.
I've had it activated by yoga classes about 4 times.
Right, but you don't remember doing something that...
No,
okay.
it was always delayed.
Right.
Whenever I would feel it.
Right.
After yoga class.
Okay, so this area, the tendinous area where the muscles attached to the bone has a little bit of blood. The muscle, it's better to tear a muscle than it is to overstretch a ligamentous tissue. So the ligaments attach muscle to bone, and then tendon is bone to bone. So just think of, ligaments and tendons do not have blood supply, or a lot of it. So it takes them longer to heal. The blood has oxygen. Oxygen is what heals the body. So you don't get that healing. So in order to get circulation there, you want to get it massaged gently, or you can tap that area, which moves the blood from the muscle into that sit bone connection. So you have to spank your butt. But tapping is good to get the circulation into an area that doesn't get it, or massaging it. You want to back off of your forward folds because the remodeling stage can take up to a year. So even though Missy can come all the way down here, you may want to back up a little bit. Work on keeping the knee straight if it doesn't strain that area too much. Sometimes it's so far off injured that you want to even that stretch out here. The problem is because it's a two joint muscle, we sort of don't use our quads, our legs are sort of like mushy and we're overstretching up here. Does that make sense?
Grace does something in class that I cannot remember. She has some cueing around getting into the belly of the muscle instead of in the, I guess, yeah.
Grace has got a different philosophy about the back of the leg though. So Grace teaches a bent knee hamstring stretch.
She does.
So she's teaching the opposite philosophy of this. Because
Well,
whatever philosophy she's coming from is an opposite philosophy.
yeah. Well, the thing about the hamstrings is some people do need a little bit of a bend, but in order to not cheat them out of stretching this area that tends to be really tight on people, you do that one leg at a time. So it's not necessarily a different philosophy, it's just that each student needs something different, and it's better to not go totally straight or totally bent with some people, but to do one leg at a time for the people who do need a bend. So it may not be a different philosophy, it's just that everyone needs something different.
She talks about protecting the space in the back of the leg rather than opening it.
That's right, and see, maybe from a dancer background, which is
And a hypermobility
and
background.
a hypermobility, she's teaching them, but we're not dancers here, all of
And
us.
you're hyperextended.
She told me that my knees, and she told me, that's what I was about to ask, and I was told that a long time ago too.
Okay, let me see your forward fold, because it's really hard to hyperextend that.
She told me the same thing.
Because you guys, because it was a
That's
fad, I'm gonna tell y'all, it was a fad. We learned a lot of the yoga came to us through dancing, and so it was a fad to tell students to walk around like this, and you shouldn't. You need to have a curve in your back for shock absorption. And it was also a fad to say, oh, too much extension in the knee. Most people are not hyperextending the knee. Most people are not. It's a thing that came from dancers that has evolved, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but that's not true for everyone. So let me see your forward fold.
I had to correct my knees in my forward fold too, because
You hyperextend.
I feel like I do
Okay. Now you're leaning back, so you want to lean forward a little bit. Okay.
Now this hurts.
Where does it hurt?
Here.
Okay, hold on. Is it hurt? Like a stretch hurt?
Oh, that's good.
Okay, well that's what you want. You want to stretch that area.
Oh, okay.
but I hyperextend my knees.
But I do.
everything is
You may need to bend.
I do it like this. This is what I normally do.
With a knee, a little teeny
With the
tiny
little-
bend in the knee.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you lose that stretch here.
Okay.
What? No, I'm asking.
And
I'm
it
asking.
still hurts.
Okay, wait a minute. When you say hurt, do you mean you're stretching, or does it mean it's an icky in my gut feeling? Because you got to know the difference.
Oh yeah, no, it's just icky.
It's icky like it's tearing, or it's like stretching? Does it feel like an icky tear, or does it feel like, oh, this is uncomfortable because it's tight?
It's tight. It's just tight.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
Okay, come up for a minute, you guys.
No.
Listen, you guys, it is important to know the difference between in my gut, this is not right, or oh my God,
It's cold.
my muscle's gonna pop because I'm tight.
No, it wasn't. No, that's not what was happening. It was not about to pop or anything.
No, but you felt like it was tight, or did you feel like you were injuring yourself?
The
Some
first
people have
time,
a hard time.
yeah, the
It's
first.
really different.
I don't know. The first time with it straight, I didn't feel like I was injuring myself, but I felt like I couldn't hold that long.
Okay, go back into it.
Okay. The regular way.
Just do a forward fold like you normally do. Good. Okay, now, she's good here because she's not leaning back too much, but you can come forward just a little more. Just a little bit. There you go. Now her sit bones are more over her knees and she's not leaning back, which can overstretch this part right here. Now I just want you to activate your thighs just a little bit. Not a lot. There you go, that's it. That's hyperextension. That you want your thighs to be active with your hamstrings when you're in a forward fold for two reasons. One, for an even stretch, and two, because your thighs and your hamstrings are a team. It's like two guards guarding a home. When this when this is active, it tells the brain that these muscle spindles in here can relax. If this is not active, this muscle doesn't really know from the brain that it can lengthen, and you can tear here. Okay?
Now that was different from this. Is this not, this is okay?
If you're activating just a little bit here, you're lined up perfect here, that's gonna bring the stretch more over here. Your hamstrings cross over here. Why would you neglect that area?
And Candace, I bet what you were doing before is you were coming into it with your hips back.
Yeah, and
Which is what's
and
common.
so
And
then she's hanging out in the ligaments, and then it's like, oh, that might be hyperextending, but you need to come forward and just give this muscle a little action.
Okay.
Do you feel a difference with that?
I do.
Do you feel a difference when you're back here? How it's
Yes.
more of a strain, like
Yeah,
you're hanging out.
that's that.
That's what it is, you guys. Listen. The hamstrings and the quads and there are other muscles that work the same way. They're a team. One guard can be asleep if the other's active. Otherwise, there's trouble. So the quads tell the brain the hamstrings can relax. It's a neurological, it's the way the muscles are connected to the brain. They need to be somewhat active. Some people do hyperextend. Let me see yours real quick. But it's not the biggest problem. And
She's got some good hyperextension.
My regular now, because now that we've been working with Tidra, I know that I have to, but this is, if I
That's
just
what
went,
I do.
this is what my legs will regularly do if I don't think about how I actively have to engage my legs, is that they'll hyperextend, but I have to actively think to bend them a little to engage.
Can I see hyperextension? What does that? Oh, yeah.
Locking your knees.
when you do that, do you feel it in the front of the knee?
I feel it in my hamstrings.
Do you feel it in the front of the knee at all?
But it is, this is a lot more work.
Work where? In the quad?
In my hamstring, in my entire leg.
Do you-
All the way through
Okay, let's
my
have-
inner thigh,
Okay, well,
inner
let's-
rotation,
let's focus on
and
this.
all back in here too.
Okay, let's focus on back here. When you put
It's
that
more work back there too.
More work meaning you feel the muscle stretching more?
Yes.
Okay, when you straighten your knee, don't kick them back hard, but just straighten a little bit. Do you feel the stretch rise, like lower down a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there pain in the front of the knee?
Mm-mm.
Is there any pain in the back of the knee?
Mm-mm.
That's not hyperextension. Hyperextension will jam that front of the knee.
So it hurts. That's what I'm saying. It hurts.
And yours?
My-
Show
My
yours.
knees hurt
Show yours.
all the time.
She's got a lot of hypermobility.
Do they hurt only in forward fold all the time or all the time? All the time?
They hurt when I'm pigeon. They hurt when I'm back here. They hurt everywhere.
Let me see your fold.
I don't get pain.
Come forward. Come over here. More in the middle right now. Okay.
I see what you mean by locking your knees. I see how you did that.
Okay, let's look at this though. This is a very good learning for those of you who want to see. Can you turn on the other leg? I mean, turn. Okay, so, okay. Now you're here. I don't see hyperextension. What are you feeling?
Nothing.
Do you feel any pain?
No.
Okay. Do you feel a stretch back here?
No.
Okay, she's not hyperextending.
So what does it look like? Does a hyperextension, can you see
It's like a bug.
Yeah.
I'll show you.
Injure yourself, Russ, would you?
She can't injure herself. She has her meniscus protecting her, her bones protecting her, her ACL and PCL protecting her. She's not.
That's okay. What is that
It's just
thing?
so we could recognize it if we see it in a student. You want to be able to know exactly what it
Maggie,
is
is it more
rather
like
than to
this?
say,
Like I can shoot mine.
Yeah, come here. Let's see.
See, and that's
'Cause
what
I've done that
mine was
before.
doing.
I don't understand what the difference between what they were telling us was so
So
awesome.
I can literally, like, I'll stand like that, and that
Yeah.
kills my cat, and that's how I know I'm, because I'll get lazy and stand like that. So if I go in, you want me to go bad or good?
Okay, hold on. Show me what you think is hyperextending. Okay. She is maybe a little hyperextended.
okay.
Look in the one leg.
Yeah.
Well, and that's also for
Right
my,
leg.
this is my dominant because of my back.
Now,
too.
stretching the hamstrings, it's hard to hyperextend when you're tensioning the muscle
Right.
because the tendency is to want to bend here.
Right.
So don't hyperextend yet. Now just come into a fold. Okay, it's really hard to hyperextend for most
That's
people.
not, yeah.
Okay, now activate your thighs as if you were going to hyperextension, but don't be aggressive about it. Just activate them a little bit. Do you have any pain in the front of the knee?
Not this way, no.
Do you have any pain other than a stretch in the back of the knee? It's hard to hyperextend in a forward fold, you guys. Most people don't. You have to have a syndrome like Ehlers-Danlos or something like that.
You've got the sits bones
'Cause I can still
straight, and
push.
therefore
Because these
you
are
can't
right
do
now.
your knees.
If you go all the way, lean all the way back, and then just jam the knees like you're just being that may hurt a little bit somewhere.
Yeah, I can feel it here,
That-
but that's my cue to
Right,
soften.
but no.
Yeah.
Instead, okay, let's say you feel it here, right? Instead of your cue to soften, just come forward a little bit, And you don't want to soften as far as a micro bend. I don't disagree with Grace, but you want to not be aggressively jamming back. You need the thighs to be a little bit active.
So Maggie, is it that more people are leaning more into the heels of the
I think
feet,
so.
which is throwing
I
the hips
think
back?
so. Yeah.
Because those certain some people press into the balls of their feet, so they're not necessarily hyperextending. They're just leaning
And they
back
can
too far.
Remember when you were
kind of
doing
gonna
that?
relevate every time you move forward.
Yeah, and you experienced the forward fold just now with straightening the knees like I asked, opposite of what you've been told, and you didn't have pain in the knees, right?
Well, not to always say. That's what in my mind you have to tell yourself, lift up a little bit to go over.
Well, what about
like
in a triangle when your knee does it?
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, well, we're gonna talk about triangle. Let's talk about triangle in a minute, but let's all stand up, and I'll show y'all what I do with my classes. I haven't done it in a while, but to help people find, if you're upside down, right, and you're like, how do I know if my sit bones are over my heel bones? Where are my sit bones anyway? I don't even know what that is. So come into, right, how do you do that? See? All right, come into a forward fold. All right, here we are. Now, lean all the way back towards the heels. Hips are shifting past sit bones are shifting past the heels. And now lean forward to where you feel like you might tip over. And now make those rocking movements over and over, making them smaller and smaller ranges until you feel like you've landed right in the middle. And you have equal weight in the front and back of the feet. Make them smaller and smaller. Good. And once you get there, stay there. Activate the thighs gently. Don't lock those knees back aggressively, but activate those thighs and see if you also lift those arches in the feet. Lift those arches and see if you get that stretch more at the hamstrings where they cross over the knee, and there should be no pain in the front of the knee. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do y'all feel, everyone feel okay?
Yeah.
All right. Now, some people may have a pain in their knee. They might have a pathology. There might be something going on there, but hyperextension in a forward fold is almost impossible. It's hard to do that.
Lifting the arches definitely makes a difference.
Lifting the arches will help because it's lining the joints up correctly, which is lining the muscles up, which is, Okay? Are y'all okay with that?
Yeah.
So yes, you don't want to hyperextend. Any teacher who tells you not to hyperextend is right, but I think the amount of bending is prescribed too much bending than should be there.
So then is the reverse happening when people do half moon and the hip is forward of the ankle? Like it looks like they're locking the knee. Is it that they're
That
pressing
will
too much
strain.
into the ball of the foot and there they need to press into the
Will you
heel?
show it?
Yeah, we show
I don't even know if I can do
yeah,
that.
because
It's the opposite of the...
because their hand's too far forward. They need to find their center. Their hand's too far.
Are you talking about the bottom leg?
Yeah, I'm talking about the bottom
Yeah.
leg. No, I mean, I've had students where the hand is underneath the shoulder, but the hip and the hip is forward of the ankle.
You're saying their hand was right, but they're coming forward?
Yeah, but their hip moves forward.
No, I would think, honestly, I know that it might look like their hand is under their shoulder, but it's too far away from their foot. See, my hand is under my shoulder, but I'm too far forward. I need to bring my hand closer to my foot.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So that doesn't mean that they're too flexible.
Torso center.
Yeah,
So
so look at me here. If I'm here, my hand is under my shoulder, I'm not too far forward. If I go here and move here, my hand is under my shoulder and I'm too far forward.
And your hip is, when your hip in your goes.
That's what you're talking about.
Right, yeah, where the hip is shifted forward.
The hip is shifted forward because the hand is too far forward and the shoulder's going over the hand. Because you maybe have given an instruction.
People talk about where you put the block and you put your hand in 4 inches. For you put your hand 4 inches in front of the foot, and for Sharon Lusk, you put your inches, 1 inch in front of the foot because there's a 6-inch difference in the
There are
torso.
some students who are extra flexible, like that I think are hyper flexible.
Yeah, listen.
And so sometimes they are actually going too far, even if they're
Too
lined
far.
up. Like the hip is going over the ankle, for
Yeah, and
example.
so I would correct it by moving their hand closer to their foot. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think for the majority of students that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about the students who are hyper flexible? You would just still have them like bring the hand back, even if the hand and now the wrist is like not lined up under the shoulder.
Christy, I would have to look at the student, because if I'm looking at the student and their hand's in the right place, then I would maybe suggest not lifting as high, maybe using a block, activating the quads more, because the problem with the back of the knee is that they're hanging out in the ligaments and they're not activating that leg.
And if it's a hypermobility issue, then contracting will be the answer, and so, you know what I mean, in a simple way. If too much mobility is the problem, then contraction and hugging in toward the center. Do you see what I'm saying?
But Christy, look at me here. Look at your students next time, okay? And if their hand is way here and they're coming forward,
Leg's not straight.
yeah, I mean,
Their hips not over.
that hurts my knee. I really think you should look at the length of their torso to see how far their hand is. And even if their shoulder is over their hand, it's because maybe they're leaning too far forward to get that. Is that confusing?
No.
Do y'all understand? So I think they need to move their hand back, and that they need to apply everything. Arch should lift. Hip abductors should be active. Quad should be active. And they should avoid hanging out in ligaments. We hang out in our ligaments. We hang out in our ligaments. And so they need to activate those muscles. And they need to have the right placement of the hand. Because I think that's what's happening. They may have their shoulder over their hand, but that's what's called. This is better than this.
Yeah.
And then
I'm
kicking that leg back. So look at him a little bit more because other things may be off. Okay? So that is a hamstring stretch. All right. Did we do any strengthening yet?
No.
Strengthening.
Narayasana.
Okay, it's contracted.
It's contracted.
And you can definitely get a Charlie horse.
Yeah.
but it's not really strengthening.
It's not.
But
really.
if she did it and then pulsed it up to the ceiling, sort of
Pulsing
with
it,
the,
get the glutes and the hands
then
in.
yes.
At the sit bone. At the sit bone. Yeah, it would get it there. Okay. Yeah.
With the pump?
Yeah. Virabhadrasana 3 a little bit because she's holding her leg up. Anything that gets the glute max will get the hamstrings right here because they have the same action. They both extend the hip.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here. Anything that works the glute max will work the hamstrings where they cross over the hip. Okay? So bridging also. Do you have bridge?
Yes.
I only put 3 and the third one I put was firefly.
What's
Show me firefly, yeah.
It's a lot of arms.
Okay, how is that working the hamstring?
Well, the picture,
Because you're squeezing your legs in, that's working adductors, AD.
Yeah, what picture? That's why I don't like these pictures, because you gotta understand the muscle. You gotta understand the muscle, because in the picture, if it's wrong, or if it's showing something else, you'll catch it. You see what I'm saying?
We typed in hamstring on Yoga Journal and it was.
Oh,
And it brought up TT Vasana?
Yeah.
I think that the biceps, I think that the medial hamstrings may act a little bit as adductors, but
No, then that's quadriceps. You're using your quadriceps on TT Vasana.
You're using hip flexors, you're using your
quadriceps.
core, your rectus abdominis, yeah. It's okay, no, that's and adductors to keep the legs.
And adductors, because you're squeezing in.
You're stretching your hamstrings at both the knee and the sit bone.
Yeah, hamstrings are on stretch in that position.
Yeah, the best way to get
No, they're on stretch.
now the best way to stretch your hamstrings at both connection is a forward fold. Okay? Just straight leg forward fold, not a bend.
So then how do you strengthen the hamstring at the knee?
Well, in yoga we don't do a whole lot of that. This gets it in the gym.
That's what I was thinking this.
Well, it's already bent. So what you're really moving is that hip part. It's doing this action right here.
Yeah.
So if I had a weight on my leg and did this, so what
Right.
yoga pose does that? Not really. It's contracted in a lot of poses, but it's not necessarily getting stronger. And we don't need it to because it's pretty tight down there anyway. We need to work on strengthening this upper portion. So if you have a student with an injury, Missy, this is good for you, for yours too. If you have a student with an injury, what could you give them to strengthen this sit bone area, especially in the early stages of the injury?
Dynamic bridge, baby.
Dynamic bridge, and what else? If someone has a yoga butt, that's what it's called. Utkatasana is working it in a stretched position.
Yeah.
So it can be too hard initially, but it's a great strengthener for that area
What about
as a preventative.
a dynamic Shalabhasana? A bird dog on the tummy.
Yes. Okay, I say Salabhasana, sorry. I might be Shalabhasana. I don't know. Okay, yes. That is a great one. Bird, yeah. That's a perfect one to do, especially early on.
Oh, like
Yeah.
the sort of alternating Superman thing.
Mm-hmm.
So could breaking
Oh, the
knees
bird
be
on the
the same?
tummy. But I mean, Superman, you know, is like
That one gets the glutes and hamstrings in an eccentric way, which may not be good early in the injury.
Okay.
And that one to me,
That's quads. Who would do quads?
well, she's bending a little bit.
Yeah.
She was bending back a little bit.
Back.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think that one's worth any of it because it's almost too hard on most people's knees.
Yeah.
There are other things that you can do that are so much better that the risk and benefit are more equal.
Okay.
What about when you're standing on one foot and you're pointing and flexing the other leg?
Show me.
And so you point and then you flex?
Well, that's getting it at the hip because remember, if the knee stays straight, nothing's happening at the knee portion. This is how you would strengthen it, doing something like this, bending the knee. Don't worry about strengthening that area of the hamstrings. That area is one that we don't get to stretch so much because there's such a thing about hyperextending. And if you're not feeling a pain in the front of the knee, you're not hyperextending. Okay? The issue with the sit bones is, with the hamstrings is not at the knee. It's at the sit bones. Okay?
You said something, I missed the end of it. You said anything that works the
Glute
glute
max.
actually work the hamstrings at the up here?
Yeah, because they're hip extensors just like the glute max. Okay?
So is behind the knee pain, is that hamstring or is this probably something
Well,
else?
but you see, you have to make sure, because a lot of people call any feeling in their body that isn't a massage pain. Is it pain? Or like
The sharp, stingy ones. That's pain?
Burning hot is pain.
Okay,
Oh.
does everyone clearly understand the difference between a tight muscle stretch and pain? Do you know the nature of those feelings, the difference? Do you clearly know it? Fine. If you feel a stretch, great. If you feel pain, not great. But your yoga students will call anything they feel, some of them, pain. That hurts. And you're like, oh my God, stop. They're like, no, but it was stretching. Like, well, don't call it hurt.
Yeah.
You know, right, you need to know the difference because you cannot call every sensation in the body that isn't a soft massage hurt.
Can you
or
breathe
pain.
through it?
Maggie,
It's
I
not
don't
pain.
know if this is right, but one way I help distinguish it, I ask them if it's like in their joint more, then I assume it's more pain because that's where all those like ligaments and tendons are. But if it's like in their muscle belly, then I assume it's more of a
That's
stretch.
wonderful if they know their muscle belly and they are aware that they even have a joint. Do you see what I'm saying? 'Cause some people ask them
to show me.
right, yeah, and that would be good because, but even if they point here, they could be pointing at the lower end of the hamstrings, but they're also pointing at the joint at the same time. And the muscle, the belly of the muscle for the hamstrings goes pretty, you know, it's not just right here. It's just in here. Even if you stretch a little of the ligamentous area, the ligaments and the muscle merge. Okay, it's not like boom, boom. So you may feel a little bit low, but there's a lot of the belly of the muscle still here, and then a little bit of a ligamentous thing. If you overstretch here, you're going to feel jamming in the knee, and it's going to be icky. It's going to be icky feeling, an icky feeling. And as long as you don't feel icky feeling, you can keep straightening. The problem is that we just sort of jam and hang out, and our sit bones are leaning back. Okay. The more you teach and the more you practice and the more you think about it, the more you'll understand how to catch it, who needs what, who needs one leg, who needs both legs, how to teach your students to heal their sit bone injury. Okay? And no, you shouldn't hyperextend, but most of us are overdiagnosed with that. We're not really hyperextending. Okay? And the issue can be addressed not with what's happening at the knee so much, but where the hips are in space and are the arches lifted. Okay. I think we should, all right, did y'all cover everything?
Yep.
Okay.
Are Triangle and Warrior two strengtheners? And Warrior, I have them down as strengtheners.
Okay, yeah. So now eccentrically we can work the hamstrings. Remember we were talking about if you're forward folding and you stop right here and you hang out.
Because they're stabilizing and elongating.
Right, because the gravity, what's gravity trying to do to my torso?
Bring it down.
Right, and I'm coming down slowly, and even coming up, but more eccentrically I'm coming down.
Just a half forward fold.
Half forward fold, arms out, warrior. This bottom leg, the hamstring is working hard, especially if the arms are out because it's creating a longer lever arm and weight farther away from this where the muscle is. All right, so these are all eccentric activities, and they may hurt people with a sit bone issue. Okay, so triangle. If y'all did triangle, if you're here and then let go, you're working this big time eccentrically, and then other torso muscles, which we'll talk about when we get to the torso. But if you're here and you're pushing your hand down, then you're able to resist gravity because your hand is supporting you. But if you let go, gravity's pulling that torso down. Pulling that torso down stretches the hamstrings more. And so if you let go of some of that support, and you're having to use the hamstring eccentrically. So that's a very advanced one to strengthen the hamstrings. It's not for everyone or most of your students, but for someone who's just very open, very strong, no sit bone issues, you can give that cue. And you can tell people, if you're a beginner, keep your hand there, but you don't want them to lean into it. You want them to get their hamstrings strong. 10%, 50%, 80% off of the weight, depending on how advanced you want to go. I think we should do triangle real quick with a block if you're not warmed up or if you're tight, so you can feel that in your body. And then we'll take, do we need to do a lunch break?
We haven't had one.
Right, okay, so.
I'd like to eat lunch.
Yeah, okay, because some people will eat on the break. Okay, so let's do triangle, and I want to review whatever muscles we have to go over so I know where we are, and we'll take a lunch break. But everyone brought their lunch, right?
Yes.
So, okay. If you have socks on, you won't be able to do it. Sorry. Come into triangle.
I just don't want to step on your mat.
I'm right behind you.
Yeah. That's probably. Let me get my sneaky socks away from you. Okay, go into triangle and support your weight of your torso with your hand, the bottom hand, completely. Just support that torso. Now take 10% of that weight off of your hand, and a little more. And your quads better start activating. Okay, and the hamstrings should feel like they're either extra stretchy and working there, right? Okay, and then take the weight off completely. Okay, and that's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's too much for most people, so I would just give them a cue to not just completely lean into their hand, but not completely take it off unless they feel like they're ready.
That would be good if you had a block, because if you had a block and you're lifting up away from the block, you still have almost like the pretend that it's there.
Right, and it's also
they're not that far down.
Yeah, and it's a difference between pushing down with your palm, pushing down with your fingers, or just pushing down with both hands.
What about your arch? You were talking
Always
about
lift it.
always lift that arch because you want the muscle to.
Yeah, if you don't lift the arch, then you're an E version, an internal
And
rotation.
the knee is going wrong.
And the knee is you're going to overstretch your medial knee and your medial collateral ligaments, and you're going to jam your meniscus on the outside. So that arch, you guys should know this is a basic, that arch should be hollow in your standing positions.
Maggie, that's triangle I'm always concerned about overextending my front knee. And that's one thing I feel like I'm working so hard because I don't want to completely straight and hyperextend it, so I'm working really hard to keep it slightly bent. Is that correct?
Because you don't want to hyperextend it.
Right.
Well, what makes you think you're hyperextending?
That's the hip thing again. That's the hip thing again. I feel like what you told us about our hip was really important because when when you were saying in forward fold, if we line up in the hips right, so when you're in triangle, it says reach ahead. Well, if you're reaching ahead, are you throwing your hip back out, or are you keeping your hip lined up? Do you know what I'm saying?
Come into triangle. And I don't come into it that way.
Right, you said you come in from a bent knee and then come up and then straighten the leg, which sounds much more less.
It sets the hip in the socket, and a lot of people, because they're weak in the hamstring and tight and confused, they don't move right, and their hip doesn't get set in the socket.
So you have them come in from this, and then
I always go into triangle from a lunge, and then I go into it. I go in from the bottom up.
Okay.
Let me see your triangle. And that's a lot of strain on the knee going into it. You may affect it. Okay. Why do you have your hand to the inside? I don't think it's wrong. I just know some people do that.
I just...
Okay, take it to the outside because I feel like...
I've been told before that it helps turn the torso if you have your leg on the in.
Some people might need that, but I feel like you get more into between two walls with the hand on the outside and forward creates a little more forward
Okay.
flexion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and if it's forward, you're also
Feeling it.
pushing your back hip out.
Okay, now put your hand down. Can you, or do you need a block?
Here.
No.
Oh, this one?
Do you need a block?
Take it anyway, just because we're not in class.
I can.
Turn it
So
down.
this way comes in a lot easier.
block?
I don't get that extension this way.
It doesn't strain the knee.
It doesn't strain
I
the
know.
knee.
Okay, now
Narrow
she's
is
talking
not
about
that way.
keeping that the abductors active. So you got to kind of scoop that hip into the socket. Make sure your arch is lifted, and now you have the supported block. Now, are you feeling any kind of pain in the front of the knee?
Not necessarily.
Do you feel jamming?
It feels
Do
a
you
little
feel-
too stiff.
Do you feel a
In my patella. That's what I'm worried about.
Okay. So do you feel a jamming in here?
It
So
just
like it's
feels
coming up
not
through your
necessarily
thigh?
jamming.
Well, what do you mean by stiff? listen.
I get like he's, are you trying to say it feels like it's coming up into your thigh? You know how sometimes
The patella is stiff. There, you guys. When the quad is active, the patella doesn't move, and you don't want it to move. Do you feel it on both knees?
I think I feel more actually on this one.
Okay, the patella. Okay, you guys, the patella.
Feels like I just feel right there.
Listen, the patella is like a train, and you have a little groove. And depending on if you're squatting or straight, it slides to that groove. And sometimes the train's off the track, and it's not because you're hyperextending the knee. It could be because it's just not tracking right. A tight IT band can cause it to tilt slightly and not track right and cause arthritis and breakdown. All kinds of things can cause the train to come off the track, and it's usually because of lateral and medial instability. Okay, so jamming and hyperextension can also cause pain deep in the knee, more anterior, but I don't know, you're describing something about the patella. And I will also say this, yoga students or the teachers are the hardest students because they overthink all of this stuff. But I'm not saying for the purpose of this class it's good, but I need to know what you mean by tightness, because the patella should be tight and stable in that position. If you have a soft quad, if we all sit down and we don't do anything with our quad, we can move the patella. So yeah, and then if you activate it, it sits tighter in its track and it doesn't move. So that is maybe a tight feeling, I don't know. If it's not pain, I wouldn't worry about it. So let me
okay,
see.
completely locking my knee and triangle when I keep it straight.
You don't want to think of it as locking, because locking is more of a jamming, but it should be straight.
You want to think about flexing your quadriceps.
Your quad is
You want to think
pulling
about
it
the quad
up,
is
and then
on
it's solid.
action in the quad.
Because why? Because if it's slacked at the
You were
knee,
saying that
it
it's
overstretches at the sit bone.
Right.
I mean, you could say it's like, but it's more like your quad is pulling it all up, and now it's like not going anywhere.
Right, and I tell you what, if you fire that quad 100% versus 50%, that'll make the difference on whether you're jamming and injuring your knee. You can do it aggressively, and the idea is to softly lock, or softly extend, or softly contract the quad, but it still should be a straight, soft, straight knee.
So this is where mine is. So if I come into a regular triangle,
Yeah.
I just come into it. I have a tendency to dunk back into
Right,
it.
you're
I
hanging.
just I hang into it. I just dunk into it. It just lays there.
Thank you.
Now, if I come into it the way that you did,
You can't dunk.
I can't.
Right.
It
And that's
stops
what-
here.
right.
And that makes a huge difference. And I think when Tedra was here, that she was trying to activate it here. That is way harder to do. If I come into it the way that you're saying, it like automatically stops it here for me.
Right.
It's still a lot more work for me
Right.
because
It's a lot.
have that flexibility here, and it's just like I just want to like dunk into it because this is just
I
like
mean,
my
you
body
are
just wants to do it.
hyperextending right now.
It's easy.
And it's a lot of eccentric work on the hamstrings to come into it. So eccentric work is harder than concentric work, and so it's not safe to go into that way. You guys, this is important because a lot of people injure themselves going into triangle.
Right, or they sustain injuries over time from that.
A lot of people injure themselves going into triangle, you know, and it could happen like this, or it could happen over small micro tears, and then all of a sudden you have a yoga butt, and you're like, where did this come from? So that's why I teach it going in. Did we already do that going into it from the bottom?
No, you should have.
Okay, we're gonna take a break after this. Let's do it again. I want you to do, and I want you to work on it. I want you to have working meditation. Okay, come into a lunge with the left
I'm not
foot
really
forward
doing
for
it.
the
I'm
purpose
just
of making
I'm
sense.
focusing more on my leg, Amy, than I am paying attention. I was really paying attention to my
You
leg.
guys, and we're gonna take a break, and you need your socks off. I'm not trying to get you to get sick, but for real, you won't be able to feel it.
What do you want to do? I'm sorry.
Okay, left foot forward lunge.
Right behind.
No, left foot.
Okay.
Oh.
here, we'll parallel.
Sorry, I'm like totally all over in your
Okay,
business.
all right.
Do you want us
Now-
to plant the back foot?
Not
Oh, we
yet.
totally got in everybody else's business over here.
Now, plant the back foot in preparation for a Trikonasana triangle pose. Keep your left hand grounded on the floor or block or whatever you're using. Bring the right hand to the hip. You don't have to do that, but for the purpose of really getting, okay. Now, do you feel that deep crease that you have in that left hip?
Yes.
Keep that deep crease, keep that hip set in the socket as you start to straighten your leg. Keep that crease, you almost lost it. Okay, I heard some hips pop. All right, and that should feel a little bit more stable and different, and it's almost impossible to hyperextend your knee in this position if you keep that deep crease in the hip. And that is, and I'm not saying that any way it's taught any other way is bad, but it took me a long time to realize that is not a healthy way to go into triangle, even though it's the way it's been done. There's a lot of things that are done, then there's no, it's like my anatomy, okay, there's a lot of things that are research-based now, and one of my teachers in school told us that a story about a person that said when they took a roast, they would always cut the tips off and throw it in the crock pot. And so then their kids started cutting the tips off and throwing it in the crock pot. And then their kids started doing that. And then one time someone said, or tell me if I get the story right, well, why do you cut the tips off? Well, because my mom did, and because her mom did, and because her mom did. Well, they did it because they didn't have room, but now you have a big crock pot and you don't have to cut those tips off anymore. So my point is sometimes things are just done because, well, my teacher did it and then their teacher did it, and that's just the way it's done, but we're not really thinking about why it's being done, or can it be done different, or is it necessary? Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So just because we're taught to really tuck our tailbone and walk around like this, or we're taught to put that little bend in the knee that we may not need, it may be another issue and we're not addressing. It's like, it's not that the issue isn't there, it's just that the reason why we're having it or the way to address it might not be the best way. So all your yoga teachers are trying to do when they tell you not to hyperextend is to protect your knee, but we're coming about it a way that there's a better way to come about it. And it almost needs to be straight. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm not telling you how to teach triangle, but I can tell you right now, if you teach this over and over and over, students are going to hurt themselves. And the purpose of yoga, you guys, is not. It's to heal and to strengthen and to be preventative. And you have so many people coming to yoga hurting their necks and their backs and their hamstrings, and we're the ones leading that. So it's about protecting your students and doing what yoga's here to do. So triangle, I think, is best taught from the ground up because it's not making you work eccentrically. People who are really stretchy won't hyperextend.
Can you show me Maggie getting in the triangle? I just
Me
wanna
getting
see
in
it.
triangle, just what we did, I'll do it.
Yeah, I just want to see you do it.
And you see, I'm super flexible, and I've had an injury, so I have to do it this way. And that's how I sort of came into it. My injuries have been a blessing. So I plant my foot, and I just come into it like that. And it feels amazing, because I have felt jamming in my knee. I have felt hyperextension in my knee.
That seems much more graceful too, in terms of the body getting your mind to open up and do what you needed to do.
Yeah, this is messy.
Fighting gravity too much.
You may have tight a quadratus kind of attaches right here, the quadratus lumborum, and it's a major side stretch, so you may feel it there too. You're not going to feel it in one place. This is also your adductors, your pectineus, your groin muscles are getting stretched a little bit.
And if your legs are too close together, you're going to feel a lot of pressure on the top joint.
Yeah, you have some triangle poses that do a short triangle, and that's more of a side stretch, Caroline was saying. And Iyengar, I think, is wider. It's more of an adductor and hamstring. And there's one isn't right or wrong. They get different parts. So yeah, it's great. And that's a way you can make your class interesting. You can do one class where you're doing triangle wide, triangle short. There's so many ways to make class fun and interesting for yourself and your students. It's just that we have triangle, well, it was taught this way, so I'm going to keep teaching it that way. There's short ways, there's long ways, there's different ways of getting different muscles in the same pose. There's dynamic, there's static, there's end range, there's long range. So, okay, I hope that helped with the triangle. I think that's going to be good for your students if you teach it coming into it the other way, or at least for your students who have problems. Guys who are really tight come into it like this. And this is wonderful for them. They're like, oh, and you'll see them starting to try to round. You just make them use that block, make them keep that flexion here. Okay, let's take a lunch break. I think about, what time is it actually?
12:33.
Okay, so 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. We have 4 more hours. 7 to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We went through 5 hours, so we have 4 more hours while y'all are at lunch. I'm going to figure out a plan here so we get everything.
Okay. What was the instruction on the arch? You said keep the arch.
Oh, the foot? Yeah. You watch people's ankles, they tend, everversion